Hi, everybody. I hope you're doing really well tonight and taking it one day at a time and being all that you can be in your pursuit of whole wellness. I wanted to jump on and do a real quick video as a follow-up to yesterday's video addressing three of what I guess I would call the most common or most talked about characteristics in the narcissism circle. And that is, there's a ton of characteristics that narcs have, and they weigh very heavily in some characteristics and not much in other characteristics. Not all narcs have all these characteristics that I'm going to get into in this video series. But yesterday's video talked about the three characteristics of controlling, lacking empathy, and taking advantage of others. Those three characteristics in particular. And the video wound up being quite a bit longer than what I wanted it to be or what I intended it to be. But one of the reasons was that it was longer is because I really wanted to get into a compare and contrast with, you know, these are traits of characteristics or traits of a narcissist, but how does that compare and contrast to a person that's not a narcissist? You know, maybe not necessarily a healthy person, but a person who is on the lower end of the spectrum as far as narcissistic tendencies go. And when you compare and contrast, it's a lot easier to see strong narcissistic tendencies, because I know, at least for me, when I was researching and educating myself and on the path of getting healthy, I learned all that I could about narcissism and what a narc was, but it really didn't help me just to learn about a narcissist, because I still doubted myself. I still questioned some things. And that's because I'm unhealthy, or I was unhealthy. I'm now on the path to being healthy and whole wellness. And I think if you have trauma or you have a past that puts you in a position where you're likely to be a victim of a narcissist, you find yourself questioning quite a bit of your own reality. And a narc does that to you. But a lot of the times your own trauma and your own hurts and your own past makes you feel like you're just not seeing things the way they are in reality, that you question your truth, you question, you know, what came first, second, third, and there's just a lot of confusion, a lot of guilt, a lot of questioning. There's not a whole lot of clarity. And in order to get clarity, for me, it helped quite a bit to just clean house. And I referenced that in last night's video. In regards to just sorting out not only what a narcissist is and how they act in any given situation and how they react, but also how a non-narcissist, how a person who is not a strong narcissistic personality would act and react in the same kinds of situations. And the reason I wanted to do this video as a follow-up to that is because I touched on my own experience with work. My work experience from 2014 to 2019 is really what opened my eyes to my unhealthy life and habits and how I was raised and my lifetime of relationships with unhealthy people. And the fact that I had no clue what healthy boundaries were or healthy relationships, what that looked like, what it required, that it required effort on my part, that, you know, there's so much involved that I had no clue what it meant to be mentally and emotionally healthy in the first place. Ever since I can remember the age of 11 or 12 on up through junior high and high school, I mean, I struggled in every type of relationship. Friendships, romantic relationships, work relationships, relationships with my family members. I mean, you name it. And there's a very logical reason for that. Other people seemed normal compared to me. Like, I looked at myself and I looked at my world and I was just like I was always struggling. Things just, I didn't understand why things came so easy to others. And for me, it just seemed like a constant stress. So tonight I kind of wanted to touch on following up to that video and those 3 characteristics we talk about, my own experience with narcissists and unhealthy relationships, or not narcissists, because I don't think anybody in my life has been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, but those people in my life who have very strong narcissistic qualities. And when it comes to those specific characteristics of being controlling, lacking empathy, and taking advantage of others, I cannot stress enough the significance of my nuclear family growing up and how I had no clue how unhealthy our family dynamic was. If you ask the rest of my family members, they will smile and nod and say we're a normal family. For the most part, from the outside, I think we do look like a normal family. It's only once you look super, super closely at the dynamics of every individual and our lives and our pasts and our experiences with work and relationships and things like that, where when you look at each person and you think, that doesn't seem like the ideal situation. And I'm not saying that people need to have an ideal situation to have a healthy relationship, but to the average person, it doesn't seem like a real healthy situation. Whether you're talking about the sibling relationship, the parent-sibling relationship, the parent-to-parent, the marriage relationship, it's just a very chaotic, very messy, very abusive, very controlling, very emotionally distraught. Just lots of stuff. And I'm willing to give you some personal examples of my life and some varying things. And I'm probably going to give you more examples in later videos and later content that give you a better picture of like what I grew up with, what I've experienced in my life, and what these 3 characteristics of controlling, lacking empathy, and taking advantage of others that I experienced personally in my life, and why when I got to my work situation in 2014 to 2019, why I feel like I was so blessed through that experience. It was a miserable experience to go through, and I really wouldn't wish it on anyone ever. But it was such a wonderful growth for me. It led me to this point where I really just had to explore what was going on up here and in here to figure out why I felt like such a mess, really. And honestly, the primary reason I did this was to be a better mother, because my relationship with my kids was not the best. You know, I was truly failing my kids because I was so angry, and I was seeking control. I wanted to control everything, and it was not a good situation. Even with my husband, like, it was just not good up until about a couple years ago. And the path that I'm on now is so much better. And the relationships have improved greatly because I've sought out getting better. But so I absolutely know the worst, probably not the worst case scenario, but some bad relationship situations growing up through my teen years, young adult, adolescence, through adulthood, young adulthood, through being a mom and a working mom, and I was a stay-at-home mom for a while, and then on into, like, I'm approaching 50 now, and I can't believe how much I've learned and how much I've grown and how much more I have to go, how much further I have to go. I'm sure I just can't wait. I really look forward to the rest of what I have to learn about life and being well. The peace and the joy are so worth it. I would describe my first 48 years of life as very emotionally aggressive, abrasive, distraught, stressful, anxiety-ridden days. It's not that I didn't have any joy in my life, but they were also intermixed with and flooded with all kinds of just self-doubt and stress and just low self-esteem and confusion and just chaos. So a couple of examples. Okay, I remember when we're talking about controlling. So my dad, when we were growing up, he believed in corporal punishment, physical discipline like spanking, physical enforcement of the rules. And if you don't know what corporal punishment is, that's what, I mean, it sounds really, really bad, and some people might think it's really, really bad. I grew up that way. It was normal in our house. Some of my siblings never acted out of line, so to speak, so never had corporal punishment, never were on the receiving end of it, but some of us did, and I was one of them. I think for me, a lot of the reason I received it and was on the receiving end of it is because I was born a truth teller. I was born to question what was going on around me and to understand truth and seeing things for what they were. There was a time, and I truly think I blocked it out. At some point in time in my life, I pray and hope that this memory comes back to me. I have no idea what prompted the argument between me and my dad, but all I can remember is we were arguing about something. I don't have the slightest clue what it was. Clearly we disagreed, and I want to say I was around the age of 13 or 14. I really don't know how old I was. I was a big girl, but I wasn't, and so I wasn't a child, but I don't think I was like at that 17, 18 young adult age yet. So I want to say I was around the age of 13 or 14. And my dad and I were in a heated disagreement, and he was yelling at me and telling me, you know, what I was going to do or how I was going to do it, whatever it was. And I remember basically, I think at that time, now looking back, I think at that time I had it up to here of being controlled. The corporal punishment, the doing what I say instead of, you know, I was at that age where I was developing my own opinions about life, and my opinions, I was not allowed to have my own opinion. My opinions needed to align with my parents' opinions or my dad's opinion. I don't really ever remember my mom requiring me to agree with her, but I do remember my dad pretty much telling me that if I thought any differently from him, I was wrong. Not those exact words, obviously, but from my earliest age, I can't remember ever being encouraged by him to think and feel freely. We were told, and I was told, to be a leader and to be my own person, but what he meant by that was as long as it aligned with what he had taught us to believe, and anything different, anything contrasting to that was wrong and less than and not acceptable. So I think at that young age, that young adult or adolescent age of 13 or 14, I started to become aware that something wasn't right, that I felt differently, that I was questioning things, that things didn't make sense, or I didn't agree with them, or I had my own opinion about stuff, and we couldn't talk about it. Like I wasn't a person. I was the product of my parents, and their job was to raise up this product to be just like them and to multiply and inhabit the earth, but to be just like them instead of, like, we were little mini-me's instead of our own person. And it wasn't okay to be different than or to be unique or separate from my dad, my parents. And now, let me remind you, I've only learned this in very recent times, so it's very hard for me to talk about It's putting myself out there and being very vulnerable, but it's so important for me to share this information with you. If you're going through a similar situation in your family, in your life, where you are just told that you're wrong, you're not, right? You're not. You're just you. You might be different from others, and okay, that's okay. Let me tell you, you're not wrong, okay? And yeah, I'm connected with my emotions, so I'm sorry if I get like a little emotional, but I just want to tell you, okay? I feel for you. Anyway, this argument my dad and I were having, to get back to the story, at one point in time, it got to where he physically, I'm not exactly sure how it happened, if he grabbed me or if I swung at him. I don't know, really. I can't remember anything about what happened before, leading up to. All I remember is I was on the floor in our kitchen and my dad was on top of me, and I was screaming and thrashing, and he was on top of me, and he had his knees on me right here, like in my shoulder area, pinned to the kitchen floor, and he was trying to get physical control of me, and I was not having any of it. I was screaming and thrashing, and I didn't want to be controlled. I didn't want the physical control. I didn't even want the mental control. At that age, though, I had no clue what was going on. All I knew, and what he as a parent probably should have been tuned into if he wasn't a narcissist, is that I'm a person too, and what I have to say matters, and my opinions, and we needed to talk. And he needed to explain to me that he's the head of the household, and I'm entitled to my opinion and to be different, but I need to adhere to the rules. And he needed to respect me as a person, but teach me that, you know, I'm welcome to be my own person, but I live in the house and I need to be respectful, and, you know, to guide me at that age of 13, 14. It's such a tender age, and it's such a important age to teach children. And I just remember fighting for all I was worth, in desperation, because I didn't want to be controlled anymore. I didn't want to be controlled. And I remember clearly being on the floor and just thrashing about, because I was not a little toddler throwing a temper tantrum. I was a person. And I just remember thinking and feeling, let go of me, break the chains. But I couldn't. I didn't. I did not win. I did not earn anything. I think that's why I'm 48 and just getting healthy. Because he eventually was able to subdue me. And I remember being on the floor, limp, and just completely giving up. Completely giving up. There was nothing I could do. I don't think that I was abused physically. I don't think I would say that. Perhaps my older brother was. Other people have it worse. So I don't say that I was abused, but I remember that I remember that instance like it was yesterday, and how crushing it was to my soul. At one point in time, I also remember one of my brothers, and I can't remember which one it was. I have two older brothers, and one of them tried to help me. They heard what was going on in the kitchen and basically came out because they were, I think, afraid for me, afraid of my dad. And they came out into the kitchen. I remember them trying to intervene, trying to get my dad to snap out of it, get some attention to disconnect him from what he was doing. And they failed. My dad, I don't know, I don't remember if my dad shoved them away or just yelled at them, or whatever brother it was failed in their attempts to stop what was going on. And I don't know which brother it was, but it must have been devastating for that brother as well as devastating to me. I mean, talk about torment. I have not remembered that memory for a very long time. I am somewhat terrified to ask my older brothers about that memory to find out which one it was that intervened, if they even have a memory of that, if they will even be able to recall that event and acknowledge, what happened or why they felt the need to intervene or, revisit that. I don't know that I would be able to handle that sort of conversation with them, or whether they would be able to handle that conversation. So I'm tabling that for now. Maybe someday that conversation will happen. I will do a follow-up video if it happens. But when we're talking about controlling, there you go. I've only recently learned and come to terms with, I really actually haven't come to terms with the fact that my dad was a narcissist growing up, but he was the most controlling person I've known in my life. And I grew up, another video for another time, but let's just suffice it to say a narc is controlling, okay? And that's a perfect example. My dad had to physically get control of me somehow. He couldn't, we couldn't just be two people. He had to physically dominate me. He was a man, a grown man in his 40s. And I was a 13 or 14-year-old girl. And he was physically on top of me with his knees pinning me to the ground. I'm not the type of person, I don't think, even at the age of 13 or 14, to physically thrash about wildly like that, like a fox caught in a trap. I don't think any normal person would do that, even a child, even a teenager, unless they felt desperately like they were being stifled. Desperate. So, now to lighten things a little bit, I want to touch on another controlling behavior that my coworker, the one who chose me as her target. So a huge issue in the office was the mail. She literally made the collection of the mail at the post office the biggest deal I have ever seen anyone make about something so ridiculous. So the company had a P.O. box, right? And every day, I guess it didn't have to be every day, but she made it very important that every single day, one of us had to go collect the mail from the P.O. box at the post office. And this became a huge deal for her. If I didn't collect the mail at the time she thought I should collect the mail and sort the mail to whoever it goes to in a timely fashion according to her rules, she would throw a hissy fit. I just noticed that it's getting to be like 25 minutes long of a video, and I just want to close with, so when you look at comparing, contrasting healthy people, or not healthy people, non-narcissists and narcissists, I just gave you a perfect example of my personal experience from when I was a kid growing up of a person who is very controlling. And a lighter scenario of a work situation where someone was very controlling, like literally, I think it was probably a little, so if I didn't collect the mail at, so she would take lunch at 11, right? And she would be back to the office by 11:20. And she thought that that was when the best time was for her to go collect the mail. So she would go and collect the mail, and when she got back from the post office, she would sort the mail right away. And, sorry, that's my dog. And if I didn't collect the mail by, 11:30, 12 o'clock, and sort it as soon as I got back from the post office. It was a huge problem for her. I sort of had like, I think I sort of do still have a little bit of a troublemaker syndrome in me, because I knew something was going on with her and she just wanted to control. So just to mess with her, I would go get the mail at like 12:45 or 1:30 or whatever, way after my lunch. And I would take my time and I'd get back to the office, or I would run and get the mail at 12:30, come back and just leave the bag of mail on my desk and then go have lunch, just to bug the crap out of her. That was terrible of me, I know. Just to egg her on. But I knew she would take the bait. For some reason, I just knew she would take the bait, and she did. It happened one time where I came back from the post office, left the bag of mail on my desk, and went about having lunch. All it took was one time. The very next time I did that, she went into my office, got the bag off my desk, and sorted the mail, because she could not handle me just taking care of the mail. And when it was my mail day, it was my job. I mean, she should have really not even cared 2 cents about when the mail got sorted. It wasn't like she was the authority on the mail. You know what I mean? It was a shared duty between a couple of people in the office. But if you didn't collect the mail at lunchtime and you didn't have it sorted by 1:00 p.m. or 1:15 or whatever, she had a major problem with this. And not one single authority person in the office, not one single manager or executive ever said anything about the mail, that it needs to be sorted by 2 or that you need to collect it every day. This was like her made up rule and her made up guideline that we had to adhere to. And so that's what I mean about control. When you're talking about a narcissist and how badly they need to have control, her way of emphasizing to me that she was the final say in the office was to go right behind me and make sure that the mail was sorted by the time she felt that it needed to be sorted by. I mean, she could have just been doing her own work and let me handle the mail. It was no big deal, right? But she had to have control. She had to manage the situation. She had to manage the operation. And a narcissist has to have control of all that's going on around them. So it wasn't acceptable and it wasn't tolerable to her that I had this shared duty with her and I wanted to do it my way whenever I felt like it. It wasn't okay that I had my own way of collecting and dispersing the mail. There were no, now let me remind you, there's no guidelines, no printed instruction, no training of collecting the mail. You literally go to the post office, pull all the mail out of the post office box, put it in a mail bag, bring it back to the office and sort it, putting it in the mailboxes for whoever it gets distributed to. But she literally could not handle my doing the mail on my own time, whether it was lunch, breakfast, or late in the afternoon, sorting it when it was convenient for me, working around, you know, my lunch or my work duties or anything like that. She just couldn't handle me doing the mail on my mail days and her doing the mail her way on her days. She had to oversee the mail. Now, just as a reminder, she was the accounts payable clerk and my job title was the payroll clerk. Over time, you know, she made up this title for herself that was accounts payable administrator, and I had gotten a promotion and a new title as I gained, you know, some, I think, experience there. And my title changed from payroll clerk to HR and payroll administrator. So, you know, we didn't work together. She was accounts payable. And for those that don't know about how the accounting world works, that's just the person who enters invoices into a computer system and cuts the check. And I was processing payroll and benefits and intern housing for the company and stuff like that. So we had very different jobs. Our job duties did not cross much at all. And that's how, like, I knew there was something funky going on, because she needed to find some way to let me know that she was overseeing the office, that she was calling the shots, that she was the decision maker, you know, that she was kind of in charge of things because she was there first. You know, she was in her job in May of 2014, whereas I didn't join the picture until September of 2014. But it's very interesting to me how crazy it was that she got so uptight. And this literally went on for the entire 5 years I was there. Over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. Every couple of weeks, she had some problem with the way the mail was being sorted. The way I was doing the mail sorting. And she would come to me time and again. And it was like, that's what I mean when I reference being exhausted. Like, she couldn't just do her job. She constantly had to remind me, hey, you know, the mail needs to be done this way, or at this time, or sorted right away, or even though there was no rules in place, even though there were no guidelines, even though the bosses never said a thing about the mail, she did. She had to say it. So again, that maybe doesn't touch on all three characteristics of, you know, the traits that we talked about yesterday that the narc has. It talks and emphasizes, this video talks and emphasizes quite a bit the controlling trait, but at least that gives you two different scenarios, one in a nuclear family and one in a workplace, of, you know, the controlling behavior of a narcissist. It can be extreme and it can be literally ridiculous, but it is exhausting. In both scenarios, it's super sad and super pathetic. Like, if you're dealing with someone that has these types of controlling behaviors, you're probably dealing with a narcissist. But stay tuned for more videos that discuss more traits that narcissists have. We've only talked about 3 of them. We're going to get more at a later time. We're going to continue this series. As always, take care of you. Thanks for joining me. Bye.